the beautiful. So much beauty in the world. From children playing to beautiful houses and even waterfalls all across the world.
2 different climates, 2 different communities, 2 different worlds separated by nearly 1,500 long miles.
But underneath that beauty, is it truly safe? Both places sit on American soil that has been poisoned by centuries of injustices that are far from complete reparation.
You may be subject to one or more of these injustices and not even realize.
Was your home built before 1978?
Do you or your children regularly touch the dirt outside that may still contain traces of lead-based gasoline?
You may be at risk for lead poisoning. So choose happiness, know your rights, and contact your mayor and city council to demand remediation for lead poisoning.
Lead is a chemical element with the symbol Pb, from the Latin plumum, which means soft metal. It is one of the heaviest known elements with an atomic number of 82 and a mass of 207.2 atomic mass units. Lead is a natural element found only in rocks, but it is very rare. On Earth, the average concentration of lead in the crust is approximately 14 parts per million, which is a unit of concentration, and it corresponds to 0.0014% of the crust. The elemental characteristics of lead, which are its number of electrons, its heaviness, and its density, provides it with useful properties. It actually makes lead soft and easy to work, and has rapidly been used in history by humans, like the Romans, who used it for piping. Additionally, because lead has a lot of electrons, it can effectively stop harmful radiations, like X-rays or gamma rays. It is also very resistant to oxidation, which means that lead doesn't rust. But despite all these useful properties, lead is a very toxic element and a powerful contaminant.
22, but when he was just 12 months old, his parents noticed something wasn't right. They took him to the doctor, who tested Michael for lead poisoning.
His level in 95 was 21.
A 21 blood lead level is extremely high. A normal reading is 0. Because of the poisoning, Michael was put on numerous medications and suffered the consequences, especially when it came to school.
It was terrible. It just affected everything I was doing in school, from learning, trying to make friends, because I was just different than everyone else. It's just, I would have loved to learn like every other student, but I had to get help from every teacher in school, because I had to have another teacher by my side almost immediately because of my learning, because I could barely learn anything.
Neurologist Peter Lewitt says lead does less damage in adults than children, but it is still toxic and can have long-term consequences, even affecting DNA.
And I'm sure an individual like that is worried, as I would be, as to whether this is something that will impact the quality of thinking, increased risk for cancer, and possibly have a legacy in one's children.
Almost everybody is subjected to exposure to lead. The primary route of exposure to lead is ingestion, which means eating the lead source. And the principal mean of eating lead is through ingestion of dust, lead dust that is generated through the weathering or the peeling and chipping of lead paint. The second most important way in which we can get contaminated by lead is through inhalation, breathing of the fine dust that may be generated during renovation, for example. Once ingested, this lead will accumulate into the body. Because of its number of electrons, lead is a divalent cation. It has a charge of 2+, and that explains why lead is toxic for humans. As a divalent lead flows throughout the blood, it mimics and competes with other divalent cations, such as calcium, magnesium, or zinc, which are important components of muscle contraction, cellular signaling, and nerve conduction. So, as lead displaces these necessary cations, it blocks, twists, and wraps everything it touches. Lead preferentially binds to sulfidyl groups, a binding of sulfur and hydrogen. These are everywhere in proteins, which are the functional structures of cells. So, as lead disturbs sulfidyl groups, the proteins fold abnormally and no longer function as intended, meaning that cells start to die. Nerves are irreversibly damaged. Lead displaces calcium at the points of synapses in nerve cells still alive, shutting down their signals too. As lead continues to creep into the body, the cell death proliferates to the brain. Divalent lead drives itself deeper into mitochondria, disturbing brain cell metabolism, uncoupling ATP production in the brain, leading to hypometabolism and ending in permanent brain damage. Because of its unique properties, lead was used throughout the ages. And Romans did not only use lead for piping, but also as wine sweeteners. And it was believed that this led to the fall of the Roman Empire by some. Later on, lead was heavily used in cosmetics to whiten the faces of aristocrats in the 16th and 17th centuries and beyond. More recently, lead has been an integral component of gasoline in cars for years as an anti-knocking agent.
In the modern high-compression engine, modern gasoline gives the greater performance required today. The car accelerates more rapidly, climbs hills faster, travels more miles per gallon. In addition to fashioning the molecules to prevent fuel knot, refineries usually add minute quantities of tetraethyl lead to help accomplish the same purpose. This model shows how just the right amount of fluid containing tetraethyl lead and dye is added to the gasoline.
And in paint as a whitener and weather-resistant agent.
According to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, 1 in every 4 American homes contains significant lead-based paint hazards. When the paint deteriorates, it frees chips and dusts to contaminate everything in the area.
The realization that lead is a potent contaminant led to most of the countries in the world banning the use of lead in toys, makeup, gasoline, and paint in the 20th century. In the US, lead was banned from gasoline in 1970, from paint in 1978, and from use in water pipes in 1986. Because it has been so heavily used in the past, nowadays large amounts of lead are present in the environment, in particular in drinking water from old piping and in soils from flaking old paint. This is called legacy lead and is today's principal concern in old cities like Burlington and Venus Keys.
UVM received this grant through the EPA's Healthy Community Grant Program, which addresses environmental and public health issues in communities. The grant will help create a new project between the University of Vermont and middle and high schoolers that will help them find toxic lead.
Lead has always been present in my household. I live in an old North End house. It's 1919.
Abby Grimm is a senior at Burlington High School and is one of many students that will be testing soil and water for lead. Thanks to a grant from the EPA, the University of Vermont will be working with Burlington and Winooski middle and high schools to see how much lead is in soil and water around the community.
So I think this is a really good opportunity to be able to be like, okay, so let's see what's actually in the soil and what we're actually running into day to day.
On Friday, Burlington High School students, along with EPA officials and UVM professors, came together at Burlington High School to learn about the grant and demonstrate the project.
We are getting kids involved in doing science that matters in their community. So this is citizen science, this is service learning. This is the way of getting the next generation deeply involved in an environmental issue that could matter.
And today, high school students came outside of the school to grab some soil samples, put it in these bags, and test for lead. They also tested the school's water using the water fountain.
Every old city in the United States needs this testing to be done because we know that for many years lead was used in pipes and in fittings and in fixtures that carried our drinking water, and lead was used to paint homes.
The soil and water will be tested using state-of-the-art devices purchased through the grant. Abby says her brother was tested when he was younger and had high levels of lead in his body. She hopes this project will prevent this from happening in future generations.
Kids don't need to be high in lead levels to have their homes renovated to be able to meet the needs. They should be able to know that there's lead in their soil and be proactive in the steps to take to not have lead poisoning in your body.
And the EPA says this project will help reduce environmental health hazards and health risks in the community. It will take place over the next 2 years.
High and middle school students will work hand in hand with UVM professors to analyze lead by X-ray fluorescence and inductively coupled plasma spectroscopy to determine levels of lead in residential soils and drinking water around Winooski and Burlington. Because lead has been so extensively used in the past, it is still an issue today, and to protect our children and our communities from the effects of this contaminant, citizen science projects like this one are key to not only determine the extent of contamination, but also to provide the necessary information to the people most at risk.